Good morning. This is David Stout, General Manager of Global Electronics, as well as co-founder of the GAMIC. Today, we're going to have an excellent team to talk about the resources and opportunities in Michigan, which is really the heart and core of the mobility space. Now, just a mention about GAMIC, in September, not very far away, we're opening for new opportunities for the Global Automotive and Mobility Innovation Challenge. Its focus is on early stage automotive and mobility companies, and we've had a lot of companies that have had great success with it. We have a broad variety of industry experts to help accelerate the business, and over 300,000 of professional services and cash to accelerate the winners. During the competition, of course, you get a lot of mentoring and coaching and networking opportunities, and with exposure at the end to up to 15,000 transportation and mobility participants through our strong relationship with SAE. Just a moment to the timing. In addition to being started on the 1st, we close by the 15th of November, and we will notify all the quarter finalists that make it by early or later in November. December through January will be quarterfinal events that will be held online. Thursday, February 24th, the semifinals will be held in person and online at Lawrence Technical University in Southfield. And then on Monday, April 4th, in coordination with the SAE International WCX World Congress in Detroit, the GAMIC final event will be held in person. Who should apply? Just about anybody that's in the mobility space, and mobility is changing so much, but we are looking at people with companies with revenue less than $1.5 million to date, funding less than $2.5 million in equity funding, grants from state institutions, et cetera, do not count towards that $2.5 million. And we're looking at a proof of concept or working model. It doesn't take much to apply through F6S. And we're looking forward to the applications. Here's a note on what the application will look like. If you just go to f6s.com/GAMIC14th, you'll be able to get in there. You can also go to our website and get information. In addition to myself, we have Vic Havila and Colin McKillop today, who are moderating the webinar. And without further ado, just some of our sponsors. As I mentioned, SAE, Denso, ESG, Fishman Stewart, et cetera. And more importantly, the experts that we're talking about today, Clay Phillips, who will be talking first, and then Kamal Doshi from Ann Arbor Spark. And finally, David Weaver, Chief Investment Officer, to talk a little bit more about the opportunities for funding. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Clay Phillips. Clay, you're on.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate and thanks to Colin and Vic for organizing this. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm going to share my screen. How's that coming through?
Oh, coming good.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes.
So, yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Clay Phillips. I'm with the Michigan Small Business Development Center. I serve as the mobility technology lead. I've been with them for 3 years, a little over 3 years. And in that capacity, I work with early stage automotive and mobility tech startups in the state of Michigan. I've been an innovation advisor and coach with corporations and startups for quite a while. 7 years as a consultant and advisor. Before that, I was at General Motors in various planning and technology commercialization roles. So I'm going to be talking about the headlines on what does Michigan have in the way of organizations, resources to support automotive and mobility tech startups. There's not a lot of time, so I can't cover everything. So I'm going to hit the highlights and be as concise as fast as possible. But first, let me start with just a basics on why should automotive and mobility tech startups consider Michigan? You'd think it'd be somewhat obvious, but there's some interesting statistics here that kind of hammer down the point. Of course, Michigan has been a center of the automotive universe for well over 100 years, and it continues to be to be that way. There are numerous OEMs, tier 1s, tier 2s, tech centers, engineering resources, facilities, and a lot of dollars spent on a wide range of automotive and mobility technologies throughout the state. So it's a place to be for resources, it's a place to be for talent, it's a place to be for facilities, and it's a place to be because this is where many of the customers are as well. A second point on why Michigan, the state is organized from the top down and the bottom up to support early stage and more advanced mobility and automotive tech startups. These are the primary organizations that I'm going to talk through. I've got a couple of slides on each one of these, but the key point, as I said, is from the top down, from Lansing as part of a core strategy to focus on these areas, bottom up in the regional areas and the local communities, and then through the academic centers and private sector, public-private partnerships. And of course, there's GAMIC. How could we let that go off the slide? So again, thanks to David and the team for creating such a powerful organization and advocate for these programs. So I'll start at the top with the MEDC. The MEDC is our statewide economic development corporation. It has a lot of arms and legs. It does a lot. In late 2019, they released a report that identified, assessed and evaluated the key industrial areas that they thought the state should focus on for economic development. And it landed on these 6. So as you look through these, with perhaps the exception of medical device technology, which I could even make an exception to, all of these have some pertinence to mobility and automotive. So with these identified as the top priorities for the state, you've got the back of the state at the state level for these technologies. And then within MEDC, there are several organizations and teams that are specifically oriented towards attraction, retention, cultivation, and development of small businesses and startups. Pure Michigan Business Connect is an organization that matches large companies that are looking for products and services with smaller companies, startups, small businesses. There's an attraction team and a foreign investment team that is specifically dedicated to working with companies that want to come into the state, as well as investing outside of the state. Part of that, one of their tools is a site selector real estate database that allows the team to help a company find office space, lab space, assembly, manufacturing space. And there's also data in there about the various communities, so you can compare and contrast the different parts of the state to find the community and the facilities that are most suited to your needs. And then finally, the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Group manages the fund that is the source of a lot of the funding for some of the groups that I'm going to talk about here. They oversee it at state level. It's a fairly big fund. And so they are the source of a lot of our financial resources to support entrepreneurship. A very exciting announcement was made last year, forming the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification. This is an evolution from a former organization called Planet M. Trevor Paul was named the Chief Mobility Officer. And most important, a key element of this is that the OFME is set up to work in parallel and collaboratively with the other key departments at the state level that have a big impact on the future of mobility, namely the Department of Transportation, Department of Energy and Environment, and the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. So there's at the state level, these organizations are all working together on the future of mobility and the electrification of that mobility. OFME identified several focus areas, and as you look through this is a fairly broad list. Mobility in the state is a very broad definition. It's land mobility, it's air mobility, it's maritime mobility, it's vehicles, it's infrastructure, it's hardware, it's software, it's connectivity. If you think or are familiar with the ACES term, autonomous, connected, electrified, shared, all elements of that model, that ACES model, are reflected in the OFME focus areas. OFME has two primary funding platforms, one aimed at test grants and a second one aimed at pilot grants. They have similar requirements, a little different mechanism when you look into the details, but the main point is there are, mid 5-figure to low 6-figure monies available to companies that are looking to test their technology at our test facilities, and I'll get to that in just a minute, or do real world pilot deployments out on the streets and in our communities. Partners are required in kind or cash. It's a rolling application. I've got the link to the fund on this page, and I should say I've got links to all of these organizations throughout the presentation, and it'll be available for you at the end of the event. The emphasis is shown on the right side: sustainable, equitable, multimodal transportation. So similar to the point I made on the previous slides, a broad definition. They're just about open to taking any creative idea, any creative technology that can advance mobility in the state. They'll consider it. This is a list of the main mobility test facilities that we have in the state. They're all world-class. The one in the graphic on the right is M-City near the North Campus and the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. They do a lot of early stage connectivity, autonomous testing. The American Center for Mobility is a 500-acre site in Ypsilanti, not too far away, with different road conditions, different capabilities. They've got incubator space, test facilities, sheds, a full array and a growing array of capability and people and technicians to work with young companies. The GMO Mobility Research Center at Kettering in Flint is smaller. That's more AV, autonomous oriented, and they have an all-weather test track. The Unmanned Aerial Systems Consortium in Alpena is 11,000 square miles of over land and over water testing, set up for line of sight and beyond line of sight UAV testing. And then finally, there are 3 facilities in the Upper Peninsula. The Keweenaw Center is a former Army test track. It's really good for off-road winter weather testing. The Great Lakes Research Center is a maritime research center, and Advanced Power Systems is aimed more at internal combustion engines, alternative fuels, et cetera. So there's a wide range of facilities available for testing in the state. Switch gears to smart zones. There are 20, although I read recently there's 21, so I may have the number wrong here, but they're scattered throughout the state, and they offer a range of accelerator, incubator, support services, programs, and resources. I've listed some on the side. Some of them have specific areas of focus. Centropolis in Southfield at Lawrence Tech focuses on physical product manufacturing, for example, and Automation Alley in Troy focuses on Industry 4.0. My colleague Komal Doshi is going to do a deep dive into Ann Arbor Spark, so she'll get into more of the specifics of how her zone operates. The Michigan SBDC, this is my organization. There's about 150 consultants statewide. Every state has an SBDC funded in part locally and by the Small Business Administration. Most of SBDC consultants work with going concerns, existing businesses, mainstream privately held companies. SBDC describes a small business as anything under 500 employees. A lot of the work done by SBDC over the past year and a half has been COVID related, just helping navigate through the various programs to help businesses stay afloat. But they do M&A type of work, acquisitions. They do dissolutions, HR support throughout the state through various centers. Michigan is unique in that we also have a tech team, and this is a team of 10 folks that I work with very closely, and we focus exclusively on the support and commercialization of early stage tech-based startups. You can see there's a range of functional expertise and sector expertise. I'm the auto mobility guy. I work very closely with my colleagues, and there's the tools, techniques, the backgrounds, the experiences that they have. And often we are 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 of us on a session with a client working through a problem. Could be fundamental business model, strategy, who's my customer, what's my value proposition, all the way into more deep in the weeds on specific contracts, detailed financial modeling, pitch deck reviews, getting ready for an investor meeting, things like that. We manage 2 grant programs. The first one, the Business Accelerator Fund. This is up to $50,000 for support services. So it's not product development or core functions, but support services. It's paid to vendors via a smart zone, and startups will work with their smart zone to develop the application, get coaching and advice on that. And these are usually paid out in smaller tranches of $10,000 to $15,000, and then building up to a maximum of 50. The second fund that we operate is the Emerging Technology Fund, and these are grants to companies that are awarded an SBIR, STTR phase 1 or phase 2 grant from the federal level. And we have an expert on staff who advises on SBIR applications as well as the ETF application. We also have a very interesting program in Michigan called MTRAC, Michigan Translational Research and Commercialization. There is a hub for advanced transportation that I sit on the review board. You see on the right side the kinds of things that we look for. Most of this is university-based early stage research coming through, looking for industry support, help, and some funding from the state to reach a milestone and take a research topic into commercialization. There are also Amtrak hubs for agriculture, where there's some overlap with advanced mobility, materials, where there can also be an overlap, life science, IT, and computing. I'll switch gears a bit to a private sector. There's 2 fairly recent organizations that came to Detroit that focus on advisory and funding for mobility teams. New Lab, I should say Techstars was here for I think 3 or 4 years. They stopped in early 2019, I believe. A New Lab just set up, they're partnered with Ford. They have 2 studios. New Lab is a New York City-based organization. They've got 2 studios working closely with Ford on a range of electrification, charging, connectivity, and autonomy, and mobility for local neighborhoods projects. And then Plug and Play has finished 2 batches or cohorts recently. They operate similar to a Techstars model. They're based in Silicon Valley. They provide funding and matchmaking and coaching to a group of, I'd say really 8 to 10 companies per cohort, and help them interview, do their customer discovery with customers, OEMs, tier 1s, and others to accelerate their programs. There are also 2 fairly recent public-private partnerships that I wanted to call out. CAVNU is a really big deal. It's funded in part by Alphabet's sidewalk infrastructure partners with collaboration from Ford, Michigan, Detroit, Ann Arbor, and others. This is, they're at the research and design stage, but the end product here is a connected corridor between downtown Detroit and Ann Arbor, electrified, autonomous, goods, people, very exciting. We think it's first in the world type of program. The second one that was just announced a few weeks ago is the Detroit Smart Parking Lab. This is in collaboration with Ford, Bosch, Bedrock, the American Center of Mobility, OFME. They have a facility in Corktown, downtown Detroit, where they're going to be experimenting and running pilots and tests for a wide range of parking related technologies. It could be logistics, mobility, charging. The door is open. I think it starts in September, so they're not active yet, but it's coming. So in sum, I kind of hit these really quickly, but in sum, I'd say, as I said at the outset, the talent is here, the facilities are here, the customers are here. You've got infrastructure and support networks for entrepreneurship. There's public and private sector funding available, and you've got access to university research. And it's a pretty nice place to be. Detroit is a growing and thriving community. So from the city streets of Detroit to the sandy beaches of the west side of the state, it's got a lot to offer. So again, my name is Clay Phillips. I'm with the Michigan SBDC Mobility Tech Lab. Here's my contact information, and I'd say I'm available via email, Zoom, calls to answer questions after the event and help provide connections to some of the organizations that I spoke to.
Okay, Colin. Colin, go ahead.
We'll introduce Kamal Doshi as our next presenter. And Kamal, if you can bring up your slides and go from there, that would be great.
Definitely. And how's that looking for everyone?
That looks great.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, and definitely thanks to David, Vic, and Colin for organizing this webinar and for the great work they're doing with GAMIC. As mentioned, my name is Kamal Doshi. I'm the Director of Mobility Programs at Ann Arbor Spark. And I wanted to give you a quick overview of the Ann Arbor Mobility Innovation ecosystem, but also a sense of the resources, some of which they clear effort to, but just a little deep dive on how you can utilize them as you think of expanding into this ecosystem. So starting with a quick overview, Ann Arbor is 40 minutes away from Detroit. We're the home of University of Michigan that has the second highest research spending in the United States. The region is #1 in the US for automotive R&D, and some of the organizations located within our county are like the Toyota Research Institute, the Toyota Technical Center, Hyundai American Technical Center. It's also a hub for connected and autonomous infrastructure. So Ann Arbor is the home of the Ann Arbor Connected Vehicle Test Environment, which is the world's largest operational real-world deployment of connected vehicles and connected infrastructure. This is DSRC based. And in 2021, the US Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration awarded another 10 million, approximately 10 million, to deploy 20 smart intersections, which are in the CV2X. Clay already mentioned the project with CAVNU, which is the Michigan Mobility Corridor, which is a public-private partnership. And again, it connects Detroit and Ann Arbor, so really leveraging this connected ecosystem. Some of the assets within our region, already Clay mentioned some of them, but let me just deep dive into how you could really access these. The first is MCity. This is University of Michigan's 32-acre controlled environment for research and testing. They run a tech lab at the MCity. It's a rolling cohort of company and residence program where they select early stage advanced mobility companies in the connected and autonomous vehicle space and connect them with student teams to work on their projects. But the companies are then able to utilize the tech track, the track and the facilities for their testing. So it's a really interesting way which some companies have utilized as a way to enter the region, engage with talent, as well as former presence. And the other is the Michigan Mobility Funding Platform that also Clay referred to. So it does provide through the testing grant a cost support in funding the time that you can get at the MCity facility. And the other is the American Center for Mobility. This is also within our region. It's a 550-acre facility, much larger with really a varying array of assets, including garage space for short-term and long-term use, highway loops, urban areas, residential areas, tunnels, and really it's for both testing, verification and validation, and self-certification. And again, the Michigan Mobility Funding Platform has that testing grant, which can be used to support at least a portion of the cost associated with testing at this facility. So jumping into Ann Arbor Spark, this is the organization I represent. We are the innovation and economic development engine for the Ann Arbor region. And we work to make it a desired place for innovation, business location and growth, and for talented people to live and work. What we do, we have 3 verticals that we work under: business development, entrepreneurial services, and marketing in the region. Our business development team works with more mature companies that have over 5 million in revenue and 5 million in capital raised, going all the way to billions of dollars corporations. We help them with their expansion, retention, site search, incentives from the state, while our entrepreneurial service team works with more of the startups. And again, we work with tech startups, but they could be from very different industries. I specifically focus on mobility, but we work on, again, office space, providing counsel, programming, educational events, networking, and then marketing the region. We have a whole team that's dedicated to getting the word out for people to know that this is an amazing place for them to be in. Our model is also pretty interesting. So we are a nonprofit, but it's a collaboration between private, public, and academic institutions that come together to fund us. This integrated program of economic development definitely leads to growth of GDP of our region, and it's based on shared values. But just to give you an overview of how the smart zone legislation works that Clay referred to, this is how our innovation programs get funded. And a similar mechanism is set up for the other 19 smart zones. And so the Ann Arbor Ypsilanti Smart Zone is funded by tax revenue, which is collected within a geographic boundaries of the Ann Arbor downtown area. And this tax capture is based on the increase in taxable value due to new development and appreciation above the base year of 2002. And the state provides the money to a local development finance authority, which is a body that is responsible for this funding. And based on the calculation, they then support Spark's work based on a contract that's negotiated annually. And a sense of our impact, just some numbers up here. So this is a 5-year period. We've been around much longer, but this just gives you a snapshot. So for the innovation funding, that's the numbers on the left side. We've supported close to 428 companies, 732 startups were assisted, 220 incubator tenants, and close to 6 million grants to startups. But we also, as I mentioned, work with larger companies. So we've had 181 growth projects and supported close to 1,600 companies. So let's dive into the programs and resources that I'm responsible for. And so my role was created in 2017, and the desire was how can we create a stronger mobility ecosystem locally that supports the mission of the state as well. And so I work with our startups, I work with some of our mid to large companies, and really advancing access to the assets like the American Center for Mobility, MCity, and the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute, and also support strategic mobility projects, which are partnership between public and private sector in the region, really highlighting innovation and using our downtown as a living lab. We track close to 230 mobility companies in our region that have anywhere between 2 and 2,000 employees. And they, as you can see here, it's a range of different industry sectors, from AI to aerospace to automotive to IoT to cybersecurity. But it still remains a growing hub for connected and autonomous technology, largely due to these assets and infrastructure within the region. You'll see companies that are homegrown like Intivo, attraction companies like Dirk and Important Safety. They moved from Dubai and Montreal to have their US headquarters in Ann Arbor. Even in the autonomous space, I'll talk a little bit more about Navia and MI Mobility coming right up. But we also have bots that do autonomous delivery, with pedestrian and refraction AI. I thought it would really help if I walked people through talked about 2 or 3 different companies that have succeeded within the region, and how they leverage both Spark resources, wider state resources, and also to highlight that, like Clay said, there are incubator and accelerators all across the region, and they all provide similar services. So if you were not in Ann Arbor, you were in Detroit, you would work with TechTown. If you were in Oakland County, you would work with Automation Alley. And our goal is, as a state, to be really supportive of your growth within our state. So this example is MI Mobility. They are an autonomous vehicle company that was started by Ed Olson, who was a University of Michigan professor. He came to Spark in 2017 looking for temporary office space. The company was still really young, but they had a decade of experience in the autonomous vehicle space, thanks to them having participated in DARPA challenges for almost a decade. And so Spark worked with them, not only find that space, but provided them with different access to different resources and grants that helped in that crucial phase of the company growing up. And now they have close to more than 100 employees within our state, and they have raised close to 80 million in funding over 6 rounds. Another company is Navia, and Navia is a company that was founded. It's a French autonomous vehicle company, and they made a trade mission to Michigan, and we had some conversations with them then around their desire to have a US headquarter location. Fast forward from that, they enrolled in the MCity Tech Lab program. They started working with MCity on testing on the facility and working with some students. They really liked being in the region. They also started a pilot service for University of Michigan staff on a part of the campus. And then further discussions led to them opening their first US production plant in the Ann Arbor region. And then a few years from there, they also received a deployment grant from then Planet M, now Office of Future Mobility and Electrification, for doing additional deployment work around accessibility and autonomous vehicles in the Metro Detroit region. And the third example is Autoasa. This is a Brazilian company that specializes in smart inspection for manufacturing. And then they were looking for a US headquarters when Spark team members met them at an International Association of Science Parks and Innovation Center conference. And they mentioned this desire of having a US location. They took a soft landing space at the Spark office. They were able to register the company there and start looking for team members. And then they also participated in an Industry 4.0 accelerator run by Automation Alley, Centropolis Accelerator, and Lean Rocket Lab. These are all incubator and accelerators within the state, where they won 100,000 investment at a manufacturing innovation day pitch event. And they are still within our region and growing, and really excited to have them. And then one example that I think I referred to this, that we often play this role of being a convener for multi-stakeholder projects and driving what could be considered as innovation within our living lab. So I wanted to also throw in that example for you to get a sense of how the ecosystem works. There was a desire to have an autonomous shuttle within our downtown, connecting important landmarks and transportation hubs within the region. And so this opportunity came up. May Mobility is our service provider, and the service will launch in October for 1 year. And it has really diverse funders. We're very excited to have such great partners participating in this program alongside Spark, including University of Michigan M-City, Prentice 4M, which is a real estate developer, the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification, as well as another startup, Important Safety, from Canada, that works on pedestrian safety. So, as a nutshell, how can we help you? If you were thinking to moving to Michigan, work with Clay, work with me, work with other incubators, we can be the pipeline that connects you to other folks here once we better understand your needs. But we do have at Spark a soft landing space, and we can advise you on real estate if you need something larger than a few desks. And that same privilege is there, in the other smart zones. And so we can really, based on, what makes strategic sense for your company, advise you on where you should be located and how you can get access to these accelerators at a low cost. Similarly, it's very important to get engaged in the community. That could be through key introductions and meeting people, but it's also through events that bring together people for networking as well as for knowledge sharing. And there are many of those in the state. And again, we can advise you on those. There are grants and resources and state incentives, as well as innovation programs that can really help you hone in on your company's business model and growth within a new region. And so really there is a lot of resources available for all of that. And we are here to guide you through that process. But before I leave, I do wanted to also mention we're gearing up for our annual Tech Innovation Festival. It's called A2 Tech 360. This is for the Ann Arbor region. It happens October 1st to 8th. This is a bunch of events that we and our partners put up during the week. There are 3 mobility events that I do want to highlight for you. The Mobility Summit, which is focused this year on restructuring mobility investment. So there will be live streaming for those of you who can't make it here in person. But for those who would like to make the trip, please do join us. It's a great place to meet the community and leaders from the community. The Invest 360 is an investor showcase. So you will meet 6 mobility companies, hear their pitches, also get to know, what's happening in the region, what investors are there. There's a great jury there. And then Mobility Row, where we block a block in our downtown, have mobility companies, large and small. So you'll see Ford and Toyota right next to May Mobility and Navia, right next to a cyber company and a drone company and a scooter company. So it's really fun and exciting. And so that can be a great way, again, to see the community out and about, as well as these companies engaging with each other and with the community at large. With that, thank you very much for having me. That's my contact information. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Hello, Colin. Are you there?
Fantastic, Kamal. Thank you very much for your presentation. We've got a couple of questions. Just one with regards to both Clay and Kamal. One of the questions that came up is the type of programming and facilities and assistance. Is that open to companies on a global basis? Are there any restrictions? Are there any requirements that the company have an established business registration, for instance, in the state of Michigan? Kamal, if you could answer that question first.
Sure. Yeah, it's a range. So there are some of our innovation grants are really focused on companies that are registered here in the state. And again, it is public sector money, and so it wants to drive. The goal is to drive jobs, investment within the region. So we want to really encourage those companies to leverage that we know want to stay here, find alignment in their growth here, and can leverage the resources to the full potential. Having said that, we understand that this shift, this expansion is not easy. And so some of our more, I would say, services around making introductions or having conversations that can happen without them being here.
Okay, that's great. And Clay,
have that specific requirement.
That's great. Thanks. And Clay, could you give us a short answer?
Yeah, it's a similar answer. I do have some clients that are based outside of the US, but they have facilities and operations here. So one of them is technically headquartered in the Middle East, but they do a lot of the R&D and engineering in the state. And so we can help them. If it's purely outside of the state, I think the answer is generally going to be no, but then we can work with the attraction team and hopefully find a home for you. So you would want to come here and have a presence in the state.
Great. Thank you very much. And our next speaker is David Weaver. And David, if you could cue yourself up with your presentation and begin, that would be great.
Okay, I'll try and do that. Get this down so I can do slideshow here. You're visible now?
You may have to press from beginning again, David. It hasn't gone to large screen yet.
Yeah. How's that?
There we go. It looks great.
All right.
You're on.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Just listening to the other two presenters, it's easy to be overwhelmed with the amount of resources available to anyone in this sector, automotive and mobility, to want to be here in the hub and the nucleus of all the activity. It's incredible. Resources and talent. And one thing that wasn't mentioned is the engineers that we have in the state because of the industry we've been in for so long are tripping over each other. So if you're trying to build out your engineering team, the talent is here. So please take advantage of it. Okay. Next, I'd like to welcome you all. And the topic I think you're waiting for now is show me the money. You've got your company started. You want to connect to the industry and get the market validation, stuff like that, but you need additional money, resources. Well, that's what we're going to talk about right now. I'm with Cityside Ventures, which is management arm for both Birmingham Angels, which are individual investors here in the Oakland County area, that put their own personal money into startups and equity positions. And we'll soon be launching the Great Lakes Angels Fund, $10 million fund, also doing early stage investing. Both those cases, oftentimes the companies are pre-revenue, which is not a problem with us if the opportunity is right and the talent team is right. Right now, we're looking at, move this bar around here. We have roughly about 16 angel groups in the state, and some of them have fund like ourselves making side investments in it. So there's two different pockets to put the money into the companies. In 2019, there was like $200 million put into startups. I have a stat here that in 2020, 102 startups raised 49.5 million from angels in the state. So a lot of money going into startups. Deal structure typically in Michigan are convertible notes, dominating the percent of deals that are done, and to a lesser percent private equity or preferred equity investments. And occasionally there's some safe notes, which are things that our group will not do. If you want to do a safe, you have to convert to a convertible note if you want money from our group. Some of the other groups are doing it, but not so many. Also, if you're trying to raise angel money and you know you need, say, more than $3 or $4 million, you're best to stage it and ask for less than $2 million to start with. And maybe that's on a note or a priced round, and then raise the next round after you get that one. Because if the first round is too large, angels are not going to touch it. Maybe they can only do 50 or 300K or something like that, a single group. That leaves too much on the table for others to raise. We don't know how long that's going to take and how long fast you're going to burn through it before you raise the best round and execute. So make your first round reasonably small, but still helps you get some milestones, mitigate risk, raise evaluation for the next round. Syndication is key for anybody raising money. I've been a CEO of a couple different startups, and I know one group can't do it all by themselves. So it's important that group is wired to other folks, can take you to share the due diligence with and help close around. So with the groups we have here in the state, we do syndicate deals with each other, plus many of us also have elder age groups and small VCs that look at some of the same deals located around the country. So it's important that you have the ability to syndicate around and help fill it out. I'm a charter member personally of the Angel Capital Association, which was formed about 2005. I started the first group in Michigan in 2002. So I've been matching deals with investors for a long time. There's a link for Angel Capital Association. They have a lot of resources there for startups that are in the public area where you can see. Also, there's a Michigan Venture Capital Association here in Michigan. There's a link for them. We're a member of that. The MVCA has under management about $3.7 billion that they can deploy into companies. Obviously, they're not doing early stage pre-revenue companies, but they do the follow-on venture round once the company shows it's got enough adoption and traction in the marketplace, they come in. You heard earlier I mentioned about a soft landing. Automation Alley here in Troy, Michigan, in Oakland County. In addition to offering all the other services, they will give a company that wants to come to Michigan and set up some kind of presence here, the ability to have an office space with mail and Wi-Fi, et cetera, for 90 days free while you're looking for a more permanent residence. So that's something to keep in mind when you come here and want to get set up. Next slide going here. There's another report that comes out nationally on angel activity, which I think is kind of relevant to share with you. It's called the Halo Report. There's a link to that down below. It gives the whole country type of investment, but the regions that got the most activity in the last year are the Midwest and the Great Lakes area, and we're part of that along with Mid-Atlantic, Texas. So there's a lot of activity here in the Great Lakes area, just not Michigan, but Ohio, Wisconsin, so on. Materials and resources are the highest sector nationwide for angel investors, which is important. And most of the deals that are being done, which is good, are new deals. And follow-on deals means you raise money and now you're going back for another round. Those are called follow-on deals. So if you're raising money for the first time, it's good to know that there's a lot of activity in that space. VCs mostly are doing follow-on deals and then follow on their own deal again. They don't really take a lead on many deals typically. Average free money valuation nationally is about 6.5 for seed round. Angels are typically doing pre-seed, so the valuation should be lower than that. It depends on the sector. Every deal is on its own, so you need to be competitive in your valuation. If you're coming to us with $10 or $15 million valuation, you're still working on your proof of concept and have little to show for it, that valuation is not going to work. So think through what your valuation is going to be. It's really key to get going and can hold you back. Sometimes you don't have a valuation for sure, and that's when notes are handy, because then the valuation is decided later when the money comes in that will trigger the valuation of the company. But angels want to know what the cap is on the note as well. That means what's the highest value that conversion is going to happen at. So we don't have an uncertain valuation. We're thinking it's 5 or 6 and you're thinking it's 10. And then when it converts, you say, well, we're $10 million now. Well, that's not the kind of dilution we want on this first round. So there's a lot of discussion needs to happen between the investors and the founders. Cityside Ventures, as I mentioned to you, manages both the Birmingham Angels and the fund. We're the first angel group in Michigan, the Great Lakes Angels, and in 2020, our Birmingham Angels that we manage did 18 deals and did about 1.4 million in those deals. We're targeted to do almost the same amount again this year. Birmingham Angels does invest in foreign companies. We need to have at least a full-time person in the company, your MVP done, a strong match to the large market segment being identified. And you don't have to necessarily reside with an office here in Michigan, although that's desired. We are looking to invest in foreign countries, like I said, companies outside of the US. An example, right now we're looking at a company in Toronto that has a Polish founder who's looking to raise some money to do a validation of his concept inside Poland and set up operations in Canada and expand into North America with this market. We've invested in some companies in Israel as well. So most of the deals are in the Midwest. We look around the whole US, Canada, and outside for deal flow. Every company has to stand on its own to being selected. Once we make a decision to move forward with our due diligence and you have an opportunity to present to our group, something exceptional is that we close our deals typically within 60 days of the presentation. We just had some companies present to us in July. We're expecting to do a capital call this week and get the money in them well before the end of August. We know it's important when you're raising money to close on the round. We know that at least one of these companies is going to need more than we can do by ourselves. So we're already started sharing the deal with other folks to co-invest right behind us or with us. Here's a link below if you'd like to learn about your ability to be a match with us. This is a link to go and screen yourself and then make an application if you believe that you'd like to approach us for raising money. Take the next one to move here. There we go. This is the team, myself and my partner, Doran York, who are managing both Birmingham Angels and the fund. One of the things that we're looking at, which makes it a little bit different from some of the other angel groups in the state, is in addition to having a fund, We expect later to raise a venture fund that can do Series A deals as well, and B possibly. So that once you're in with us and either the fund or the angel group, maybe both, if we get the fund going soon enough, you could look for follow-on funding if you've been doing well with us, helping get started on the venture round, and then syndicate that with others. So you don't have to go shop for finding VCs on your own and look for those people. It's important to us, for our investors too, to know that there's opportunity for follow-on funding. You can keep the foot on the pedal and keep plowing ahead with your growth of your company and the development of your technology. Michigan is unbelievable for the opportunity here. As you heard earlier, 73% of the spending in R&D gets spent right here in Michigan in this space. We've got a very extensive network of vehicle and mobility testing, as you saw earlier in the presentations. 18 of the world's largest OEM manufacturers and so on are right here in Michigan, with the highest concentration of employment, talent. Really makes sense for anybody if they want to consider this business opportunity to reside or do business here in Michigan, for sure. Not only are we the undisputed capital for mobility and automakers, but 96 of the top 100 suppliers are right here in Michigan. So there's a lot of way to be connected to that. And I might point out a lot of the angels, as you might expect, in Birmingham Angels and other groups around the state, came out of the auto industry and the mobility industry. So they understand that can not only add value with their investment, but with connections they have in the industry to help you mitigate some risk and grow your business here in Michigan. As you saw, there's a couple of slides presented earlier by Clay. It's a beautiful state to work in. And if you like the outdoors, it's a wonderful place. And we are on the border of Canada, biggest trade partner for the US. Millions of dollars transport back and forth across that border here in Michigan, more than any other border in North America. So we're glad to be neighbors with, especially Southern Ontario, which is very heavy in the automotive industry space as well. A lot of opportunities for talent and research. So here's my contact information with an email address. If you have questions about any things I mentioned on the slides here, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be glad to try and assist you or direct you to other folks if I can't help you personally. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you, and I look forward to having you participate in what we're doing here in Michigan.
Fantastic, David. Thanks very much for your comments today. And we'll open up the Q&A session now. And I have a couple of questions for the panelists today. And one of the most recent Q&A questions on our session here, basically impressive funding amounts. David, what proportion, if you can comment on it, of funding from Michigan Angel Groups goes into the mobility startup sector? And what can mobility startups do to be more competitive to win a higher proportion of angel funding in Michigan? And so really it's sort of a percentage question, I think, David, if you can comment. And then what could mobility companies do better to make themselves more attractive?
Yeah, when you're raising money for a startup, unless you have a group that only looks at one sector, you're competing with everybody else that's raising money in a lot of different sectors. So if you look at our portfolio on our website, mobility is a low percent. That doesn't mean that we don't like mobility. It means there haven't been that many mobility or automotive companies come to us to raise a percent of the investment. We're looking at AI, and we're looking at life sciences. We're looking at all kinds of different things. We're looking for the best deal for our investors. So you have to be competitive, and both your valuation, your business opportunity, and the upside on that for this. And then you'll get percent that's available. Like last month, we had two companies present. One was automotive, and the other one was in the environmental space with bins for collecting waste in commercial settings and stuff like that. And the other one is automotive and lighting. Both of them, I believe, are going to get some capital. So it really depends what comes across our board and how you compare it to the other things we're looking at the same time. And if you hit us at the right time, it's there. But you have to rise to the top. The cream gets picked. So be solid in what you're presenting. Make a good story for it. We get to see into the CEO by what they put into their presentation for us in the way of filling out our platform and finding out. If you're not really clear and concise about what you want to do with the money, how you're going to go to the market, how you're going to build your management team. We know the revenue projections are estimates because you're not really in the market yet. We don't hold everything up on that, but we also don't want you to be so low key that you're not going to show like $5 or $10 million in 3 or 5 years. We don't want to see real slow growth because we want to have a company that's going to have an exit. A lot of people talk about their technology in their presentations, so forget as investors, we want to make a profit. We want to see that you're going to build a business that's going to have an exit, whether it's an IPO, which is not that well favored, or an acquisition, which is more likely, especially in this sector we're talking about today. We want to know that you're in a space where somebody's going to want to take you as soon as you start showing demonstrated traction in the marketplace and acquire your company. And then we're interested in what the valuation is at that time. What's the EBITDA and what's the multiple on that at the time of the acquisition? So position yourself to be very, very strong and you'll get selected. But you're also competing against most angel groups are looking at a lot of different deals. VCs normally have one focus, it's life science or something else. Angels are all over the map with what they're looking at. So you have to be the best of whatever's coming across the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And David, with COVID-19 and just other circumstances in the world today, and then competing industries, what do you think the time horizon is for the typical angel investors? And in the past, it was a case that a lot of investors, if they were looking at medtech, for instance, they might be happy being an investor in a particular company for 10 years. In other technologies, perhaps shorter. What's the time horizon today for investors, do you think?
Well, we know when you're first in, you're in it longer than the VCs are. VC money follows. Some of the deals we're looking at, we really like because it looks like they might need up to $2 million on the first round that we believe we can help them fill that. And they'll grow with their own capital and go to a bank and raise the rest of their money and never need VC. That's all the better for us. The dilution's minimal on us and the founders. We like that. So typically we're looking for a deal, even if it needs an A round of 5 or 10 million like that, that might be the second and the last round in the deal, and we get out within 3 to 5 years. Okay. We've got a couple deals that I think are going to be less than 3 years. We got very lucky in those, but we like 3 to 5 years. We're not players for 10 years. That's more VCs that have patience with their money. We went out before then. Okay, and great. The group can be per company. It varies on every deal and how many people are in the group, but your raise could be anywhere from 100 to 300K or more in a single group investor thing.
And going to Clay, I'm just going to try and go to each of the panelists here and hammer them with a couple questions. Clay, what, in your opinion, what's the biggest lesson learned for you in how, let's say, a North American startup or an international automotive or mobility startup can best connect and network with potential tier 1 and OEM automotive customers in Michigan? What's their one lesson learned that positions them to make those strong connections with potential customers?
I think there may be a couple dimensions to the answer. The first is, at the early stage, you're doing customer discovery. You're not selling, you're learning. And so, we can provide those introductions and teach young startups how to do that. So that helps build relationships. You're learning from the companies, you're learning about what the problem is, you're learning what solutions have been tried, what's working, what's not working. And then that helps you as the startup and the founder develop a stronger value proposition. But I find that if you follow those principles of lean startup and early stage customer discovery, again, it's you're going in and trying to learn, you're trying to absorb. And then, but once you've built those relationships with the advanced engineers or with advanced purchasing or with a technical community or a user group, you can go back and say, well, now I've got this idea and this is what I've been working on. Does this scratch the itch? Is this going to work for you? And so it's that longer term, you build up the relationship and then you can become part of that ecosystem. The other way, it's a little bit for more mature startups, is to work with the corporate venture capital arms or the tech scouts at a lot of these companies. Then I helped start GM Ventures, and we were a separate entity. We had our own modus operandi, but our mission was find things that would stir the pot a bit and bring in things that wouldn't have been developed with our normal partners or internally. And the good CVC organization is staffed with people who are not only financially savvy, but they understand the needs of the business, and they can help a startup understand, are you on target or are you off target, and why? So I think just those are the two things that first come to mind. I think the bottom line is don't sell, learn, and then that helps build relationships.
Absolutely. Thanks, Clay. Kamala, a similar question, but based on the experiences that you've had with some of the companies that you've worked with that are international organizations, what challenges do those global startups have when they start to consider relocating to Michigan? And can you sort of comment on what are the biggest lessons learned that they need to really focus on to be a success and to achieve the type of growth that you talked about?
Yeah, again, it's not a one answer fits all. It depends on what your product is and what your service is and how high touch it needs to be in terms of, if you're selling something where you need to understand how the plant works, how are they doing their systems and operations, you might have to actually go visit things, likely things like the learning of the environment in which you have to make the sales is very important. And even if you have a broad understanding of the sector, it might not always give you the true impression of what it is if the market is totally different. So, like for our companies, the one example, a Brazilian company coming here, the way things might be done there and sales are made, or the needs that are there might be slightly different, and it serves them well to have somebody who is either here, so has the knowledge of this industry and this space as a local hire, or for them to come and spend more time here and really connect with the folks in the community and the ecosystem. Each place is different, and each place has its nuance and its support systems and organizations that can help. What helps a company really succeed is tapping into most of these, and a lot of these are free, so they come at no cost to accept the time that you invest. And by having the relationships, Clay and my role is very much focused on others like us. We are meant to be that connectors. We are meant to help you with limited time spent have maximum impact in terms of how can you leverage the grants, or how can you leverage the resources, who should you meet, or even how do you structure your business model to this market. And that, I think, can really help you. And if you take that time to do that and try to build networks within the community you want to move into, it can position you well.
Great. David, this is a bit of a strange question, but I think it applies to all three of you, and I think you'll have different perspectives on it. And that is, for a startup, a lot of the challenge is that there is intellectual property that isn't yet protected by the startup. They haven't been able to find the financial resources to be able to go out and adequately provide some protection. There's hesitancy in discussing what is the secret sauce and where should they, first try to patent their idea. But the biggest issue is how to get that funding for the initial patent. And I'm wondering if each of you could comment a little bit on that with regards to how a cash-strapped startup can best accomplish that. Starting with you, David.
Yeah, okay. IP is certainly important. We want to know if they haven't even filed a provisional or anything, that they have been diligent with somebody telling them they need to put NDAs in place with everybody they talk to about the deal, except that investors are not going to sign NDAs. But typically anyway, but they have those in place, non-competes if they are worried about talking to manufacturers, if they're going to outsource some of the production, stuff like that. They have those in place while they're working on the IP. Now, some companies are pursuing patents and they really haven't defined what they're doing yet to justify the verbiage that needs to go into a patent. One of our team members is an IP agent that can help assess a company whether they really are ready to file a patent even. They might not have to do. Some companies are best to keep it a trade secret if it's something that a patent's going to be more revealing that you want in the marketplace. Competition is also afraid if they go to someplace and all they have is a trade secret and you got a black box, you don't know what's in there. That's scary itself to try and go and compete with these companies, launch something and find out they come back and sue you, because trying to defend a patent as a startup is very expensive and can be a death blow. So we really have to think about what your IP strategy is, and we put money into that. We like barriers to entry for sure. We don't want something to be easily ripped off. We're not going to invest in those kind of things. Sometimes it's first to market with something you can't patent, but you have the right marketing skill to be out there and be branded so heavily that somebody wants to acquire you because of your brand and your client base. Okay, that works too. I don't know if I really answered the question the way they're expecting.
That's great. And I guess a quick same question, Clay, and then Kamal, if you could address it, your thoughts.
IP is more than just patents. And I agree with what David said. The founder needs to understand what they have that's special, and then protect it with the right tool and technique. We use a tool within the SBDC tech team that is really great at providing visualization of a world of patents. So you just put free text in, it goes in and pulls out a bunch. You can interrogate each one, or you can look at graphs and pictures of who's doing it, why are they doing it, what's the taxonomy around the technology. So you can get some really good insight of who's in the space, what do they call it, why are they doing it, and sometimes you can then find a gap or something that you could go after. But there's an 18-month lag, so it's not perfect. But the foundation thing is understand what it is that's special, isolate it, and protect it with the right way. We, through our BAF, the Business Accelerator Fund, one of the acceptable applications of that money is to help a startup with an attorney get a filing done. But we try to get them to the point of, yes, this is worth filing for, and this is how it should be filed, or this is how you should treat it. And then we can help provide, working with Como at Spark or the appropriate zone to get the resources to do that.
Great. And Kamal, any thoughts?
Totally agree. And the only fine point I'll put there is that at least for the grant purposes, we do need the company already in Michigan. So if you're already here, then we can the appropriate smart zone can work with you to get the legal support. But if you were just considering being here, then that would not be possible. But in terms of really helping you think through it, some of that guidance can be provided if you were just part of our attraction play.
And coming back to you, David, question here from the chat box. What's the difference in investment mentality in Michigan versus Silicon Valley, and specifically in terms of equity versus raise amount versus risk tolerance? It seems like it's significantly more difficult to raise capital in Michigan, in particular due to investors wanting to see early profitability or physical products or such. What's your thoughts on that? Is there a real difference between Silicon Valley and the Great Lakes Midwest region of the United States?
Well, the Bay Area in particular, and California in general, are willing to use safe investments, SAFE, stronger than the Midwest. We by nature are more conservative than the Wild West with their thoughts. Our valuations are normally lower than you would find the same company trying to pitch in the Bay Area or Boston. Their higher valuations are more accepted, but I don't know that that's the best for the company. It depends on what you want to do. I think we have people coming here because they like the method that we want to help the company, just not put money into it. We are your partner. We're part of your team now with our money in it. You know, we're just not going to put money and look for the next deal. We want to help you grow and connect you to other things. But there is a difference between the East Coast, West Coast, and Midwest as far as conservative goes and valuations go. Although we are seeing companies come from California and stuff like in Austin, Texas, coming here to raise money because they didn't like the environment that they were raising money where they were there. So we must be doing some things right that we're attracting people on the same coast that seems to be doing well.
That's great. Thanks, David. And Clay, question for you. The parking lab garage that was recently announced in downtown Detroit, can you give us a little bit of background on that? I know it's brand new for Michigan, and so there's not been a lot more released than sort of the initial news release, but can you give us a little bit of timing on what's happening with that organization?
The short answer is no. All I know is what I read and what's on the website. I was at the Center for Automotive Research conference in Traverse City when the governor and Trevor announced the program. I tried to do a little bit more digging. My sense is that it goes live in September. There is a link out there on the page that I talked about it, and there's if you Google it, you can find it. So there's a general description of the scope of what they're doing, what they're going to try to focus on initially. They've got a building. It's an existing building that I think Bedrock owns, and they're going to be looking for applications for startups, researchers to come in and test and try different hypotheses that involve a wide array of smart parking, smart charging, smart logistics, different uses of a parking house. So I think it's, when I said it's open, I think they're open to a lot of ideas. I didn't get the sense that they have a very narrow, we're only doing active charging in the garage. It's like, bring us your ideas and we'll consider it. But I don't know exactly how the process is, how they're going to vet them, any kind of the underlying support, funding, that may still be TBD. I just don't know.
Okay. All
Stay
right.
tuned.
Okay, so brand new program. Their website is open.
It's up.
Coming back to Kamal, the M-City program. Can a international automotive mobility company be a resident at M-City? Could they take advantage of that from a standpoint of offices? They may have a small number of employees that they're sending to the United States. Would that be something that would be available to them?
So Yes, it is open to, it's a competitive program, but it's open to companies that are located anywhere around the globe. And it's not necessarily, there isn't really a revenue metrics that limits. So some of the more well-funded companies can also go and apply for a position there. They do not offer office space. They do offer availability to do testing at their facility. And so how we generally work, and it was similar in the case of Navia, and then, there are two right now in the program, Adastech and Atlas Tech. They're both at Spark. Spark can provide you with a co-working space. We also have a number of other co-working incubator accelerators within our region that are in close proximity to MCity that I can connect you with. And so the idea would be you could get office space there, but where your students can come and meet with you. But when you need to go and test on the facility, you can go to MCity and do that. And that has worked really well for companies getting into the ecosystem that are in the connected autonomous space, because you get an experience of what the local ecosystem has to offer. You meet with the talent, you set up an address where you can receive mail, they'll keep your packages, even if you might be coming in and out and you're not dedicatedly here in Michigan, or you are one person here. So it can be either of those.
And Clay, a question to you from an international company standpoint. There are a lot of foreign companies, Asia-based companies, European-based companies that are of a reasonable size. They're doing business in the automotive industry, but they're not yet doing business, let's say, in North America with the transplants or with the domestic OEMs. Can they take advantage, in utilizing Pure Michigan's resources, being able to access the portals, being able to access individuals? They may be a larger company in a foreign country, but essentially they're starting their foray into the United States, into North America with, maybe 5 people. Are they equally qualified to make use of Michigan available resources and opportunities?
So here's the way I'm going to answer that. I'm going to say, and this is just like a philosophy. The answer is always yes until you find a reason to say no. And so I think what I want to do is connect with a colleague at PMBC and have that conversation and get more into the specific case. Clearly, if a company, an offshore company wants to buy something, they're looking for a product or a service. Yeah, we got the for sale sign out. We'll help match up that company with Michigan companies that can satisfy that need. If it's a small company offshore that wants to sell something into a company that's headquartered here, that may turn into a maybe. But again, it comes down to what's the benefit. As Komal said, the bulk of our funding is economic development. It's state taxpayer and a little bit of federal taxpayer money mingled up in local taxpayer. So our focus is on job creation, job retention, good job creation, good job retention, capital formation, and growing businesses in Michigan. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's just a small business in Michigan. If it helps Bosch and it helps their R&D center here in Michigan, and if they go off and hire 25, 50 new engineers because they've got something hot that was brought to them through a small business or brought some, that, I would argue that that's good for the state. And it kind of is incumbent on folks like Komal and me and others that are in this job to advocate and do the right thing. We bump up against rules and regulations and policies, of course, but the one thing I like about Michigan is like it's people like Gretchen Whitmer, the governor, and Trevor. These are very open, creative thinkers, and they're just like, yeah, bring us the business, bring us the ideas, and if it's a good, strong case, they'll work through it. So I think, again, say yes until you find a no, and try to beat back the no's.
Well, that's nice. That's a nice comment from any organization that has government funding. Kamal, were you?
I may have just gotten myself into big trouble, but We'll see.
And I was going to reinforce Clay's point that the state as well as local players organize a lot of different events and networking events, and a lot of those can be a great place to at least just feel out the ecosystem, even if you're far. And now lots more is happening on Zoom and other WebEx mediums. I think it's a great way to explore what's out there. Can you make connections? There are matchmaking events that the state puts up. And these can all be a great tool to have your first conversations, first forays into Michigan. And if you do start feeling some traction, then make your visit and start scoping out and engaging with us here, and we'll help you make that transition.
Fantastic. All right, guys, I think we've covered a number of the questions in our Q&A session. I'm sure there are a couple there that we won't have enough time to get to today. But I really appreciate everyone's attendance, and this presentation has been recorded. It'll be available on the GAMIC website in the near future, along with the individual presentations that have a lot of detailed information. Those will be available as resources for our attendees, and certainly appreciate everyone's attendance today. David, if you're available, I'll turn it back to you to say final words.
Well, the reach of GAMIC has really gotten much stronger. We have typically half of our quarterfinalists at least coming from outside of North America, and a large subgroup by the semifinals, and two of our winners this year, one is from Turkey, one is from Paris in the past year. So this has been very useful because those companies, our whole title, GAMIC, Global Automotive and Mobility Innovation Challenge, we're focused on providing resources targeting North America. And you've done a great job, all three of you, Clay, Kamal, and David, in helping the fairly large group. I saw up to 80 people at one point watching, and I'm sure that a number of those are international. So we really want to thank you all, and it's going to be great to be able to have this on our website so that others that may be interested, that are the new applicants for the coming year for our 14th season, can already assess that and start to get excited about what Michigan has to offer. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you again to everyone. And for everyone, remember GAMIC 14, our 14th annual challenge starts September 1st, 2021, and finishes at the SAE World Congress, which we're all hoping for will be an in-person event here at Detroit, Michigan. And we welcome applicants globally from Asia, Europe, North America, South America. I think the only continent that we haven't had a company apply from has been Antarctica, but perhaps there's a snowmobile company yet to be born in that part of the world. So thank you again for all of our attendees. And a shout out to all of our sponsors for helping us make this event happen. And thank you again. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.